Hi, I'm Suzanne Simard. I'm defending the memoir, Life in the City of Dirty Water by Clayton Thomas-Müller on Canada Reads 2022. Clayton shares the story of his life in this book and how he grew up to become a climate change activist. Clayton Thomas-Müller, author of Life in the City of Dirty Water, joins me now on Zoom.
It's nice to be here.
It's nice to see you. The reason that I chose your book is because I wanted to hear firsthand your perspective, as an Indigenous man, as a person who has experienced, the oppression of First Nations people in Canada, the way you see the world is really is so critical at this time as we're all facing climate change, which is going to have traumatic impacts on all of us. And I guess my question is I'd like to hear about your insights into how you turned yourself into an activist.
Ever since I was a little guy, just a child really, I've always had a deep sense of fairness, and a hunger for justice. Whether it was, a bully on the playground, picking on my cousin Star, or getting jumped at school by some of the school bullies and getting into fights over bullies, talking smack about my mother when they hadn't even met her. I would approach conflict head on. And I think that a lot of that drive, came from the stories of my mother, my mom telling me about the terror she faced, but was unable to, really express because she had to show strength in residential school, staying up all hours of the night to make sure that her sisters didn't get molested, and in deep ERDM therapy sessions, I've through ancestral memory, I've seen, the place where they had all the beds where my mom slept as a child. And I smelled the smell of urine from all the children, who were terrified, and peeing their beds at the night. And that sickly sweet smell of fear, the smell of fear is a very unique smell. But she talked about how she did not quit though. She always got up and no matter how screwed up things were, she would always look out for her sisters. And of course, her brothers, they separated the genders at residential schools. So she only got to see her brothers once in a while. And then, and then in my own living memory, I remember my mom, working at A&W. That was back when they'd have roller skates and skate out to your car and put your burgers and stuff on a tray on the window. You'd drive up. And she was going to Daniel Mack High School in Winnipeg, full time, trying to get her high school diploma and working full time. And then after she graduated from high school, the first in our family to graduate, she went to university. The people I had around me to learn from were women who had survived residential school and had survived, the violence of patriarchy, and we're enduring it as I grew up with them as my mentors, as my teachers, as the people who provided care for me. And I think that just kind of translated into a set of principle in my own mind, in my own heart, that when shit got hard in my path, I would always try to take the time to think about how it got to be that way and learn from it, and then get right back up and right back on the red road again.
So when you've been involved in defending the land against the expansion of the pipelines from the tar sands, you've jumped in feet first, fighting the big corporations that are, basically exploiting the land, just as you're describing the exploitation of your family and your mom, and you're at a disadvantage compared to the big money, obviously, that is defending these huge corporate interests. Can you tell me how, what special thing is being brought to bear on that fight that you have been pretty successful at?
Well, certainly culture, language, and the power and protection and guidance of our ancestors. I didn't just get right into fighting corporations. I started off as a community organizer in the city of Winnipeg, in my hometown. My older brothers started the largest Native gang in the country, the Manitoba Warriors. And my first real job was running a drug house for my older brother John and my uncle Brian, who was the president at the time. And they there came a time, when my brother John, he said, what, he sat me down and he said, what, I'm gonna go back up to Pugatawagan to our reserve, and I'm gonna hunt moose, and I'm gonna fish, and I'm gonna have a gang of children and get married, and I'm never coming back to the city again. And he said, the heat's coming down, and I don't want you to throw your life away doing this stuff. You're way too smart for this, Clayton. And he said, I want you to go to school, do something for our people, help our family. And it was interesting because the next day, my girlfriend at the time, now my son's mother, she said the same thing. She said, I'm in love with you and I like being with you. But I didn't sign up for this gangster, so, you got to choose between that or doing something better with your life, going to school or something, getting a job, that's not selling drugs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you got to make a choice. So, I did make a choice, and I got myself into some inner city, educational programs that were designed and rooted in decolonization. And eventually, at the age of 19, I started my own organization called Aboriginal Youth Initiative. It's a community development organization, but our sole purpose was to confront the gang epidemic, the youth gang epidemic that was happening in the Native community in the inner city of Winnipeg. And one thing I learned working with all those young people for those years in the early stages of my career was that our origin story was all the same. We had all, if you go back far enough, some corporation, whether it was a mega hydro corporation like Manitoba Hydro, or an oil company like Syncrude or Suncor, or a mining company like Cameco, uranium, or Hudbay Gold, or some forestry company, like Tolko or whatever, like all of us, had our ability to hunt, fish, and trap, to gather medicines, to hold ceremony, impacted by an entirely new wave of colonialism. And that's what brought me to working on these issues of extractivism, because, Indigenous peoples in Canada, we're being extracted just like gold, just like, oil and gas, like tar sands, like timber and fish, and all of these things. We're also being extracted from the land for this economic capitalist, neoliberal, industrial madness. Mm-hmm. And, and so for me, over the years, I've had more doorways opened up, more responsibilities, requested of me to assume in the movement, to help people, to resource people, grassroots, frontline land defenders and water protectors. And, yes, these corporations and the governments that they work in collusion with and manipulate and control have, infinite cash resources. But we have our own resources as well. And we have power and protection of our ancestors and the connection to the sacredness of Mother Earth that they don't have. And we saw that at its greatest might during things and in moments like Idle No More in 2012. We saw it, at its greatest height during Standing Rock. Tens of millions of people were touched by Indigenous independent media, controlled by Indigenous peoples during Standing Rock. And we proved that we don't need the corporate intermediaries to translate our stories, to touch people and to activate them at a profound spiritual level, right deep into the marrow of their bones, to take action on existential threats that we collectively face, like climate change.
I've worked with a number of Indigenous people in my own work in forest ecology. And when I try to look through through your eyes, through the eyes of Indigenous people as I'm learning, it's more about, being part of the land, being connected to the land. And you talk a lot about the land and your connection in your book, and how when you're dispossessed from the land, how things fall apart. And I'm just wondering, most people in colonial, Canada, settler Canada, aren't very connected to the land. And to me, this is one of the crucial aspects of trying to address climate change. And I'm wondering what you can tell people who really do care, who are going to be watching their children, watching their grandchildren, experiencing, fires and floods and, climate changes here. And we've wrought this upon ourselves by this extractive kind of mentality. What is it? Can you help people understand so that we can transform our whole society, not just, fundamentally to be inclusive, but also to be more regenerative? Is there a way for people to learn?
So Indigenous peoples have been very, very patient, very generous with settlers. The frequency of violent and unpredictable climate weather-related calamities is increasing, and unfortunately, the way that climate change works is it's much like a Richter scale. It's a compounding scale where 1 is bad, but 2 on the scale is 10,000 times worse than 1, and 3 is 100,000 worse than 1. And, we see entire communities like Lytton First Nation just being burnt in a day by these wildfires that are raging. We see, places like Abbotsford become a lake again, in the Fertile Valley there, where the majority of Canada's produce comes from, and this is not the first stuff that's happening. I mean, like, Fort Mac burnt down. Indigenous peoples, we play a very incredibly important and vital role in whatever conversation takes place by decision makers, and by those, with resources, with cash, in terms of how we're going to transition the Canadian economy off of fossil fuels. We have the technology. We have the people-powered social movement, which is growing exponentially day by day by day. 1 million kids marched September 27th of when Greta Thunberg, that little Swedish girl, came to Canada. 1 million kids marched on the streets demanding Trudeau stop the pipeline, demanding climate justice, demanding the end to old growth logging. And I saw these little grade 3 kids, like with all these other graded children walking, some were so small they had to get off the school bus backwards, like a ladder, because they were so tiny. And they had signs as big as they were saying, stop the pipeline, no TMX. So there's a profound shift that is happening right now as well, that is also on a compounding scale. And this new generation of young people are not going to tolerate and will not be as patient with these neo-colonizers, and the reality of it is that people, human beings, we're going through a big reevaluation of our relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth. And, that means that we need to reorganize ourselves in a way that embraces traditional Indigenous knowledge, in a way that embraces progressive science. We need a lot of young people to embrace green chemistry, and we need more scientists to be developing things like hemp concrete. And so, like, yes, do conservation, be an environmentalist, but you also have to if you're going to do activism, you got to attack these systems. We need everybody to change these fossil fuel dependent systems.
It's fascinating. I'm going to ask you a few more things just about the process of writing your book and how it made you feel. Like, you looked back over the whole course of your life, and I'm just wondering, how did that make you feel, and what did you learn from that process that you might not have known before you did it?
In going through my process of writing my memoir and reflecting on life, it almost killed me. And, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. My wife and I separated. She left me. asked me to move out because I was too difficult to live with, because I was drinking to cope with the trauma that I was surfacing and unearthing in sharing, especially, the recounts of being raped as a child in a state run, in a group home. And I wasn't even a kid in the group home. Just my dad worked there, that was real heavy stuff to share. And luckily, I had built a powerful network of friends and family to support me. And, and therapy and healing doesn't just happen like that. It's something that you got to keep revisiting and working on. It's just like having like a six-pack, you want to have the nice washboard tummy. Well, you got to do sit-ups for the rest of your freaking life and probably not eat so many burgers,
That's so great.
I will say though, like, things are looking up though, you put in the hard work. And, I have not had such a close relationship with my sons in their entire life. And even their mother and I are, we may not be living together, but we sure, we still love each other very much. And we're raising our kids in a good way. And I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very grateful that I can see again and not be clouded by trauma. It's not that it isn't still there, but it's not clouding my vision. And so, I give great thanks, to where I'm at in life right now. And the fact that Life in the City of Dirty Water is being defended by you, for Canada Reads. I prayed for that. Literally, when I started writing this book, I prayed that my book would be a part of Canada Reads so it could touch as many people as possible.
The theme of Canada Reads this year is one book to connect us, to connect us. And I'm wondering what you think of that and how your book might connect us in the world and across Canada.
I think that Life in the City of Dirty Water is perfect for this year's theme. There's vast polarity between Indigenous peoples in Canada and the rest of the country. And, the purpose of this memoir is to hopefully close the gap on that polarity a little bit and bring us back to the original spirit and intention of the treaties that our ancestors signed with the colonizers, 2 canoes going down the river, sharing the river and not interfering with each other's paths. I think that we can get there again. But when we talk about truth and reconciliation, Native people aren't talking about, meaningless promises. We're talking about land back.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that it's, that you wrote this book and that I love your book and that I get to help, promote this book to Canada and the world. It's a wonderful book.